Welcome, scholars, to today's lesson on the Christian fallout. We're going to be looking at Christianity as a whole and how it divides itself up into two major branches during the Middle Ages. The Christian unity is at stake, and by the end of the day, Christians will not be quite so united as they were. Let's begin today with a brief discussion of our two main branches of Christianity. The two big ones, the two ones that we're going to focus on today, are the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church. There are many branches today, thousands of them technically, but many of them are really small. There are a half a dozen, 10 major branches of Christianity. These are our two big ones, and they're going to be what we're focusing on today. This split does happen during the Middle Ages. We are coming up to it in our timeline of events, and so now is a good, appropriate time to go into these two different versions of Christianity. We have Catholics, which here in our community we're more familiar with. I know a number of our scholars here in the school do practice Catholicism. Catholicism is centered in Rome. And the Orthodox branch of Christianity was centered in the capital of the Byzantine Empire, Constantinople. So those are going to be the two centers of Christianity. They were also the two capitals of the Roman Empire. When the Roman Empire split into East and West, we had Constantinople and Rome as capitals. Now, within the Byzantine Empire, during the Middle Ages, we had the Patriarch of Constantinople, who was, in essence, the leader of the Orthodox Church. It's not exactly accurate to say that the Patriarch of Constantinople is to the east what the Pope was to the west. That's not a perfect analogy. Within the Catholic Church, the Pope has a lot more power than the Patriarch of Constantinople does. But for the sake of simplicity, we're going to say that this is the leading religious figure in the East. Now, usually in the East, the patriarchs and the emperors of the Byzantine Empire, would rule together, and each would respect each other's authority. The emperors would mostly respect the fact that the patriarchs were in charge of religion, and the patriarchs would mostly respect that the emperors were in charge of everything else. However, when significant conflicts did arise, and when there was a lack of cooperation between the emperor and the patriarch on a particular issue, it was the emperor that was supreme in the East. The emperor did hold that trump card over the patriarch. Now, the patriarchs themselves, the Orthodox Church is led by patriarchs. Patriarchs hold authority which is similar to that of an archbishop within the Catholic Church. Perhaps their areas are larger than those of the archbishop, but they administer an area which bishops then oversee their own little religious communities. So the patriarchs are the administrators and leaders of the Orthodox Church. But within Orthodoxy, there are many patriarchs. And back in the Middle Ages, there were several within the eastern part of the Roman Empire, and there were several within the Byzantine Empire. The Patriarch of Constantinople, however, was seen as the first among equals, not necessarily above everybody else, but given their proximity to the emperor and the influence that they could have over the emperor, the Patriarchs of Constantinople really did put themselves just that little bit above everybody else. This is not to say that they had direct authority over the other patriarchs, but through their indirect authority, they really do wind up managing the religion as a whole. This contrasts with the West, where the church is growing exponentially. They have really grown by leaps and bounds from a small little collection of papal states before Charlemagne that really needed the support of that empire to even survive. and then growing to the point where we are in our narrative today, where on the dawn of the First Crusade, the popes in Rome really have a lot of centralized control, and they wield significant power and influence throughout all European politics. We have kings and emperors that are listening very carefully to what the popes are saying. They feel, that threat of excommunication is a very real threat, and therefore the popes can really control, to some extent, the politics of European nations. Now, as the popes are increasing their power and increasing their influence, they start to see themselves as, a supreme religious authority, perhaps above the authority of all these patriarchs. And when the popes start to act in such a way, and they start to assert their authority over the Eastern patriarchies, this is a map going back in time a little bit, but we can see we've got four patriarchs in the East, and then the patriarch in Rome, which is going to take the title Pope. Once the Pope starts to look at themselves as supreme, we're going to start to see some issues here. Now, over time, there are going to be evolutions of religious practice. The East is not going to look exactly like the West, and this is going to be time and distance that leads to some of this change in religious practices, but there was no major differences at that time. Of course, some of the time would argue that they were huge major differences, but some today might argue that as well. But compared to the differences that would arise later, or the differences between, say, Christianity and Islam, these differences were quite small. The schism of 1054 is going to arise because the Eastern Orthodox, the Eastern patriarchs are not going to recognize the supremacy of the Pope in Rome. And in 1054 AD, the Latin Pope, the one in Rome, will excommunicate the Patriarch of Constantinople. Now, the Patriarch of Constantinople is going to respond to this by excommunicating the Pope. And they're going to have this mutual excommunication, kicking each other out of the church, that really is not going to be the defining moment in which there is no longer any sense of unity between these two churches. But for simplicity's sake, it really is a good moment to say, before this, the churches were mostly unified. After this, they were mostly separate. 1054 really is that breaking point. What we get now is we get most of Western and Central Europe falling within Orthodox Christianity. Then we have Southeast Europe, Turkey, and other areas of Eastern Europe stretching into Russia that follow the Orthodox branch of Christianity. And this is what really illustrates that separation. So quickly, Eastern Orthodoxy today. Eastern Orthodoxy, or the Orthodox branch of Christianity, is the second largest branch of the Christian faith today. There are many practitioners of Orthodox Christianity. It's primarily practiced in Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and Russia. I think we saw that in the map that we just looked at. But you also see it worldwide. It is a worldwide religion. There are practitioners of Orthodoxy on every continent on Earth. So it is a global religion, and it has about 300 million practitioners. This is a very large number of practitioners of Orthodox Christianity. So it is a major world religion. It's not all that common in the United States, although there certainly are a number of Orthodox communities within the United States. There are some here within Rhode Island. So you can, perhaps be a little bit more aware when you're driving by churches and you look over and you see a sign that says Orthodox Church. This is the branch of Christianity that we are talking about. Hope you've enjoyed today's lesson. I'll see you in class.